Peace. Welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. Folks, we got a fantastic show lined up for you. Let's talk about what has happened with Harvard and their admittance to being part of the great legacy of slavery in this country. We have a very, very important guest to talk to us, give us the ins and outs of their 134-page report about what they did and what they plan to do to address their slave legacy. We'll have that conversation. At the 4 o'clock hour, folks, we're going to be checking in with culture correspondent Ashley Banks to give us the latest about the appeal that Derek Chauvin has put forth to the court. Also, we're going to talk about the report about the Minnesota police and how they're now are going to be calling for a consent decree to clean up all of the dirty practices of that department. So we'll have that conversation later. Let's talk about parenting. Are you the type of parent that's going to give your child a choice, or are you a helicopter parent? We'll talk about that dynamic with Culture crew member Nira Muhammad. So stay with us. A lot to get to. It's the culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the show. I am super excited today, folks, to have a conversation with you about something that I think that has been really on the minds of a lot of people since this announcement has came out, that Harvard University has admitted that it has served, that the transatlantic slave trade was an integral part of its establishment. President Lawrence Bacow has come out and said that the university is going to be making moves and progress onto addressing this slave legacy. And they have created a committee to talk about this. And out of this committee, a 134-page report has been developed to talk about the various elements of Harvard and their relationship to the transatlantic slave trade. So today, we thought that we needed to have this big conversation, but I could not have this conversation by myself, or we couldn't even have it with our culture crew members. We have to tap into the experts to give us a deep dive into understanding the many dynamics, the factors, just so much to consider as we're looking at one of this country's most elite institutions and how they plan to handle their legacy of slavery. Here joining me now is a brother who I have a love and great respect for. We had the opportunity to share the platform on Thursday nights, and he is just rocking and rolling. He's a professor of Africana Studies at Howard University. He's the host of The Black Show. He can be seen and heard in so many different spaces. He's one of our premier scholars in the country. I'm so happy to have him on the air with me, my brother, Dr. Greg Carr. Dr. Carr.
Hey, Farajii, it's good to see you in the daytime, brother, on the East Coast. We missed you, though, man. I know you can't work 24 hours a day, but we missed you on Thursday nights, brother, the power table.
That's right. Oh, man. Look, let me just tell you something. It's such an honor and a privilege to have you joining me on this side of things, brother. And, Thursday nights has always been an exciting night for me. We talked about a lot of things, and more importantly, I learned a lot just from listening to you, the passion that you bring, the level of history. I mean, when Dr. Carr comes on the air, you stop and you listen. That's all you do, man. You stop and you listen. You take notes. Because you're about to get schooled, son. You're about to go to school.
I felt the same way for Thursday nights for a long time. And now 5 days a week, we get to learn from you, brother. Congratulations, man, on the culture. And like so many others who are watching, and the numbers continue to rise on Black Star and beyond. I just learned so much. And I love the intergenerational dialogue you bring, the expertise, the level of preparation. Before we went on, you said that's all you do is think about this space. So
man, that's all I do,
and it shows. And it shows.
That's all I do. And your show, of course, the Black Table. People love it. People tune into it. They watch it. You can check it out. It's streamed on Fridays, folks, here on the Black Star Network. And it's a phenomenal show. Gives you a lot of insight. And people always ask me, and I don't know why they ask me. I'm like, why don't you talk to Dr. Carr? They say, man, does he like really own all of those books?
Yeah. my bank account over the years, my poor black man bank account was say, yes, why did he buy these books? But yes, these are my books. But no, man, you know, it's for us, by us. So just like Black Star Network and the producers, man, telling Joel backstage before this, man, you know, shout out to the Black Star Network and to Roland Martin. I mean, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And now we have Roland in the evening, we have you in the daytime. And so between y'all, man, just the foundation has been laid for something truly transformational.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, look. And you know, I had that, you know, we had our sister Reese on.
Yes.
Just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I told her I'm gonna bring her back. So I was like, nah, you coming on this side. No, you know, and I'm waiting for the promo for her situation to drop, right?
We all are. We all are. But in the meantime, you got a deep bench, brother. I'm loving the diversity of hosts. I mean, not hosts, of guests, the diversity of conversation. Man, you seem to, you just keep finding people, man, and I love it. Brother. And it's every day, which is just like, whew, hey man, my hat is off. That range is remarkable, brother. Thank you.
That really means a lot to me. Yes. But no, I you know, when we look at this conversation, and Joel and Shannon and the team and I, we were just all talking about it, and we were like, Dr. Carr. Oh. Dr. Carr. Because there are a number of professors I have a great love for. Yourself, one of my other favorite professors, Dr. Ray Winbush, from Morgan State University. I mean, you know, when you think about the brilliance that you brothers bring to the conversation, it's fantastic. And so for a conversation of this magnitude, I did not want it to be just a haphazard conversation.
Sure.
Because I feel like with Harvard being the institution that it is, Doc, it represents a lot for a lot of people. It represents so much for America. But then to have this, and I don't want to say it's a bombshell, because I don't know if we are truly surprised that this institution was connected to the transatlantic slave trade the way it was.
Right.
And when we start to look at it, they put out this 134-page report detailing various elements. And I'm looking at the report right now, Doc. Okay. I mean, they broke it down into various sections or chapters, rather. They have an introduction, slavery in New England and at Harvard, financial ties, Harvard and the slave economy. They have chapter 4, intellectual leadership, Harvard slavery and its legacies before and after the Civil War. Chapter 5 is the long legacies of slavery, segregation, marginalization, and resistance. And then they have chapter 6, which is a conclusion. And then chapter 7 is recommendations to the president and fellows of Harvard College. And then there's 2 appendices attached to this report. First and foremost, when you heard this announcement from Harvard, what was going through your mind? Were you surprised, or were you like,
no, not
finally?
No, not in the least. Harvard had to get in the game. I mean, it had already been beaten to the punch by our sister Ruth Simmons, who, of course, convened the conversation at Brown University. Ruth Simmons was the first woman of African descent, first person of African descent to be the president of an Ivy League school when she took over Brown University some years ago. And she convened, as a former African-American studies professor, Dr. Simmons, a committee to investigate the role of Brown in enslavement. And of course, she retired from Brown to great fanfare, and then decided to return to the South. She's from Louisiana. And she is just now retiring from being the president of Prairie View A&M. So Dr. Simmons kind of pointed the way to this. And as they mentioned in the report, in the recommendations phase, section 7, they note her. And they also note some other places. Princeton Theological Seminary, which is created a $27.6 million reparative endowment. Brown pledged $10 million. 10 was raised by private donors. and 8 million from the Brown Corporation. And we know that I'll quote Scott Galloway, professor at NYU, who calls these Ivy League schools and others who are Ivy adjacents, the Stanfords, the Universities of Chicago, basically the NYUs, they're basically hedge funds with who admit the children of the donors and a few other exceptional Negroes and others and burnish their brands. So Harvard was a little bit behind the curve. Georgetown had raised some money, and they're talking about descendants of those who were enslaved. They mentioned the University of Glasgow, in fact, in the Harvard report. So Harvard, of course, is Harvard, which means, oh, we can't let these other schools outdo us. So they are going to set aside $100 million in an endowed fund to basically engage in forms of, I don't know, they don't call it reparations. They wouldn't be that silly. That would get them on the hook. I'm sure their lawyers workshopped every line in what they wrote. But, you know, in the case of Brown, they put together some money for K-12 students in Providence, Rhode Island. They engaged in loan forgiveness for students, fellowships in terms of slavery studies. In terms of Harvard, and I know we're going to talk about this in a minute, finally. Harvard created some recommendations that, if nothing else, will burnish the Harvard reputation. So no, I'm not surprised at all. And anybody who wants to read about the role of enslavement in the Ivy League, get Craig Stephen Wilder's book, Professor Wilder's book, Ebony and Ivy, where he basically traces the impact of enslavement and the creation of the Ivy League schools, all of them. So you can just get it in one book. So no, I wasn't surprised at Harvard at all.
Would you recommend that people take a look at this report, this 134-page report?
Absolutely. I think it's a masterpiece of forensic science. I mean, I love it. I mean, I was telling Joel and you before we came on. I mean, I've kind of been laughing. There have been a couple of moments I laughed out loud. Not at the tragedy of enslavement, of course, because we, of course, are victims of that, ongoing victims in the afterlife, but laughing at the kind of aggrandizement of Harvard's resources. Sven Burkett, who has written a number of studies talking about enslavement, he's got a book called Empire of Cotton. As it is noted, Burkett and his students, including undergraduate students, have been tracing some of this stuff for a very long time. And now, you know, in the wake of the reckoning of 2020, so-called, and of course, President Bacow in 2019 called this piece together, you know, Burkett plays a valuable role. And there's some top-notch scholars involved in the committee that was pulled together. Tamiko Brown-Nagin, who we've talked about before, you know, Professor Nagin at the dean of the Radcliffe Institute, professor of law at Harvard, who just wrote a great book on Constance Baker Motley, Evelyn Hammonds, Annette Gordon-Reed. I mean, there are a number of people, but again, reinforcing the Harvard brand. I started to say Howard, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Right.
Little Sisters of the Poor Benefits Association, that is recommendation number 3, I think it is. Building partnerships is what they call it. But we'll talk about that with HBCUs.
Right. So, folks, I would advise folks that are watching today, if you want to get a copy of the report, you can download it for free at legacyofslavery.harvard.edu /report. legacyofslavery.harvard.edu /report. And you can read the report for those who are interested, those who would like to see what Harvard has to say about their involvement with slavery. This is an opportunity for you to see it. Dr. Carr, when we look at this, $100 million, and my first thought was, well, where did they get this number from? First, even before the number, what was the impetus of even creating a committee? And I know you mentioned everybody else was kind of doing it, but do you feel like there was a singular incident that was like, you know what, we need to do this? Or is it just a number of things that happened over the past couple of years? And you know, whether it's George Floyd, the killing of George Floyd, whether it's all of those things, what do you think really got Harvard saying, okay, enough is enough, we got to say something?
Well, Harvard is the brand, as we know. It's not the King's College in New York, which was later renamed Columbia University. It's not any of the others. It's not Yale. It's Harvard. Harvard is the American Oxford, the American Cambridge, the American University of Berlin. It is the the brand by which all other universities are measured. So $100 million is a lot more than 27.6. $100 million is more than 10. In other words, the number, I'm not going to say it's arbitrary, but it's a nice round number that it adds a zero to anybody else. You know,
right.
You know, and
it sounds big. It sounds substantial and significant.
No question. And just like Mackenzie Scott, who was giving away millions in unrestricted funds in terms of philanthropic efforts to historically Black colleges, tribal colleges, and other institutions, the money on her Amazon stock has made that money back that she gave away and more since she's been giving it away. Harvard's not going to miss $100 million, and it's an endowment. It's not direct investment. It's not like they're saying, okay, we're going to give $10 million to 10 different HBCUs to do what you want. No, it's not. No, it's not that. It's not like they're saying we're going to endow several K-12 institutions and you can do what you want with the money. In other words, it's not a form of reparations. It's really the money's not really going anywhere in terms of, you know, Harvard is going to, and for some of that money, I'm sure, pay itself. And you know, they're offering, among other things, the possibility of exchange programs with Harvard faculty and HBCU faculty. Now, maybe they're going to pay the HBCU faculty salaries when they come work at Harvard. But of course, that would mean that the HBCUs would have to pay the Harvard salaries, which would actually hurt the HBCUs. Anyway, I'm not sure how that's going to work. But the point is that that $100 million is not being given away. To quote the line from the Jimmy Stewart film, It's a Wonderful Life, Potter's not selling, Potter's buying. But at any rate, so that they're burnishing their reputation. Now, is it better to have this money than not set aside? Of course, it's better to have this money set aside. But I'm not surprised at all. In fact, when the opening at the beginning of chapter 1, the first line in the report said Harvard's motto, Veritas, which means truth, of course, inscribed on gates, doorways, and sculptures all over campus, demands of us truth. What? And as you know, brothers, as it is said to have been said to Pontius Pilate, when Pontius Pilate said, "What is the truth?" and would not stay for an answer. So when you read the report, the truth of the matter is a great deal of it is big up in Harvard. It's big up. In fact, when I first saw the story break and downloaded the report, I went looking for the things about Harvard that I expected Harvard to lift up. Who are the exceptional Negroes that it is let in? So I went looking for the HBCU folk. The Du Bois is in there, of course. Eva Beatrice Dykes, a lot of people don't know her. She was at Oakwood College. She came out of DC, went to Dunbar High School, went to Howard, came to Harvard. They said, we don't count the Howard degree. You got to take a Harvard degree. They talk about that in there. Richard T. Greener, who was the dean of Howard's Law School, was a graduate of Harvard University. He's in there. But what I'm looking for, and then I started reading the footnotes. And as I read the footnotes, what I noticed, take Eva Dykes, for example. I'm looking at Eva Beatrice Dykes, who was the first woman of African descent to qualify for a PhD, complete the requirements for a PhD in history. One of 3 Black women who graduated PhDs the year she graduated. And I'm looking at the footnotes, and what I see accessed is the Radcliffe archives for the things they have in their archives of Eva Dykes. And so that's cool. But what I didn't see were the books written by Black scholars, including a cat at Oakwood for years, talking about Eva Dykes. I'm like, how did Harvard evade the opportunity to quote Black scholars writing at Black institutions about somebody they're saying was a person who suffered racism at the place that, well, I tell you, chef's kiss. So yeah, you got to read it, man. Forensic science. It's a beautiful elevation of the Harvard brand in a kind of moment of, I don't want to call it cosplay, but self-flagellation in pursuit, as they said, something that ends of them truth. Anyway, we'll see.
I want to, Keenan, before we take our first break here, I want to throw this up here. Well, let me do this. No, we got to take a break. I'm going to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to break it down what Harvard says they're planning to do. It's not only a report, folks. Trust and believe. It's not just about putting out of this report. They have some ideas. They have some goals in place that they are striving to accomplish. And we're going to share with you what those goals are, the implications. I mean, look, we got Dr. Greg Carr here. They're going to break it down for us, give us some insight, and help us to shape our context in providing some analysis around this whole conversation about Harvard's $100 million legacy of slavery fund. So stay with us. We just getting started. Stay with us. A lot to get to in the next 30 right here on The Culture, here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Table with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punching!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
Folks, we are having the conversation around Harvard's claiming or saying that they're going to commit $100 million to create a legacy of slavery fund after they have come out with a 134-page report outlining their involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. This report of the Presidential Committee on Harvard and the Legacy of Slavery shows intimately, based upon their history, their research, and the work that was done by their committee, that Harvard gained and benefited from slavery. And so they are trying to come clean with this report and with other ideas and goals to address this issue. We've been talking to Dr. Greg Carr, who is a professor of Africana Studies at Howard University and is the host of the Black Star Network, The Black Table. Dr. Carr, I want to throw up here just something that they put out. This is what Harvard put out. Keenan, if we could post this quote on the screen talking about what Harvard is planning to do, some of their key goals in this whole effort. They are planning to address slavery legacy. The report calls for spending the money in a multitude of tracks. One, by tracing the modern day descendants of enslaved people at Harvard. Two, by building memorials and curriculum to honor and expose the past. Number three, by creating exchange programs between students and faculty members at Harvard and those at historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, and by collaborating with tribal colleges. And four, by foraging partnerships to improve schools in the American South and the West Indies, where plantation owners and Boston Brahmins made their intertwined fortunes on the backs of the enslaved. Seems like these are very lofty goals here. And Dr. Carr, when you look at goals like this, I mean, I'm talking about the memorials, the curriculum, and they said that a lot of these goals are vague on purpose because they wanted to hear feedback from other folks within the Harvard community and outside of the Harvard community to add to it. But do you think this is a good start? These four goals, is this a good start for us?
It's a great start for Harvard. I don't think anybody should be applauded for confessing to a crime.
Right. Now that's fact.
So, I'm always wary when we celebrate having been abused, when an abuser says, I did it. That doesn't really change the relationship. And in reading through the recommendations, I understand they were intentionally vague. The direct descendants, I love this one. Let me read it again. It says, we further recommend that in recognition of its lineage, the university engage with these descendants through dialogue, programming, information sharing, relationship building, and educational support. Through such efforts, these descendants can recover their histories, blah, blah, blah. The last one there, educational support. So you're giving scholarships? Now, in the case of Georgetown, which offered assistance to those who are direct descendants of those who were enslaved under Georgetown's auspices, including several Africans who were actually sold to keep the university's doors open, those people still have to satisfy Georgetown's entrance requirements. So, we'll see. I mean, and that's just in terms of the people who can trace. Now, mind you, there is a lawsuit. Tamara Lauren is having a lawsuit because one of her ancestors is in that photograph collection that is at Harvard, that Harvard now claims that it owns. I mean, so they're in court about that. So you got a direct chance to do the right thing there. But let's move on quickly because I know we don't have a whole lot of time. The enduring partnerships thing was interesting. The visiting appointments between HBCU faculty and Harvard faculty, that's interesting. Okay, as I mentioned before, the other thing they said is maybe they're going to establish a Du Bois Scholar Exchange. So HBCU students, junior level and above, can come to Harvard, and Harvard students can go to HBCUs. Now, that kind of exchange program has existed for years among HBCUs and HWCUs. But here's what I found out at Howard after 22 years of teaching. There are several Ivy League schools who stopped doing it. Why? Because the Black students would spend a semester at Howard and say, yeah, we good. We're not going back. So they started transferring to the HBCU.
Wow.
So when I saw Harvard saying they want to establish this, my first question, and it's an open question, is, did you all have one before and then you stopped it? Because I know several schools in the Ivy League, which I won't name, and Ivy adjacents, who canceled doing it because the Black students were coming and staying. So again, there's nothing in this report that doesn't help Harvard. In fact, I mentioned this finally, Appendix 2, the note on process. They talk about all the things all the people they consulted, the librarians and things like that. They said they consulted librarians at several schools, including Howard, that digitized information for them. Well, that led me to this other question in number 3, enduring partnerships. They want to digitize collections at HBCUs to help them, what they call it, safeguard these materials. Safeguard? Really? They did. There's a partnership between Princeton and Harvard right now that is digitizing the records of the Black Teachers Association, Pre-Integration Teachers Association. It's being headed by 2 fine Black scholars, one at Princeton, one at Harvard. Again, I won't name them. Y'all can look it up for yourself. My question is, how y'all going to digitize institutional records of Black institutions that were preserved and fought during Jim Crow to end Jim Crow, and now the stuff end up at your house? Y'all ain't slick. It's going to, and then now you'll invite 2 or 3 remarkable Negroes up there. Maybe you'll give them a Carnegie or they'll get a MacArthur Genius Grant. And what you now have said is, look at us. Look at how great we are. We're helping these. Meanwhile, the institutions themselves, maybe they'll get a couple of exchange students, a couple of exchange faculty to burnish the fact that they've worked among the Negroes. But look at how they watch it. When y'all read this, look at how they characterize HBCUs. Look on page 9 when you see HBCUs first mentioned, and they talk about them doing the best they could, but ultimately not having the resources to be. You know what? Just cut a check. Y'all love Du Bois so much.
Cut a check.
Write Fisk a $50 million check, no strings attached. That ain't no money. You'll make it back in 6 months on your endowment. Write him a $50 million check, but you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that at all.
So I mean, and so it like, you know, going piece by piece, looking at each one of these goals, I'm wondering, I mean, there were Black people in the room. There were Black people at the table.
Yeah.
So how was it that they were in the room at the table, but yet these goals, these recommendations still come across as being Harvard's recommendations, Harvard beneficial?
Because they're of Harvard. And this is not a criticism of any of them. Certainly not William Julius Wilson, certainly not Tia Miles or any of the other. And I mentioned those two in particular because Tia Miles is a younger scholar and William Julius Wilson is one of the most respected Black scholars in the country. This isn't the William Julius Wilson of 40 or even longer years ago, writing in the Negro Digest, Black World, debating about the future of HBCUs. This is the William Julius Wilson who was recruited by Henry Gates and others into Harvard when they were building that dream team, when Gates and Cornel West and William Julius Wilson and others were brought to Harvard. And then the other Ivy Leagues started doing the same thing. You know, I'm not critical of any of those Black scholars, any of those Black academics, because they are part of that system. And in those debates and rooms, you know, this is a very rich report. They're not ducking some of the difficult things that are raised. At the same time, they are part of that institution. In other words, reparations is about a lot more than burnishing the institutions that benefited from the enslavement of Black people. If you're talking about real reparations, you're talking about repair. So I don't have any problem with that. Now, if all those faculty decided that they were going to resign and come work at HBCUs, I'd be like, okay, that's interesting. Go on, because HBCUs aren't the answer either. Harvard is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. What's the situation for poor Black people and brown people in Cambridge? Just like Yale is in New Haven. Anybody been to New Haven know that there's Yale and there's the hood. So I'm saying, you know, at least with Ruth Simmons and Brown, they're talking about the surrounding area there or around Brown. Now, so I don't think Harvard is excluding any of that. What I'm saying is, as you say, if this is the start and they kept it intentionally flexible, let's see what happens next. And, you know, we'll all wait and see.
So speaking of reparations, I mean, you talked about Professor Tamika Brown-Nagin.
Yes.
And she said in an interview last month, just before this came out, of course, that they were being intentional about making sure that this $100 million is not seen as reparations, because she said, quote, reparations means different things to different people. So fixating on that term, I think, can be counterproductive.
Absolutely.
So do you think that was the right decision for them to not frame this as part of a reparations conversation?
I know they be leaving themselves open to very real critique, because reparations means one thing. And Professor Brown-Nagin, a brilliant scholar, on the faculty at the law school, Tamika Brown-Nagin got a JD. She know damn well you better not call this reparations. So you have to be intentional. You can't, of course it's not reparations. You can't talk about reparations. A professor at Columbia, my friend Catherine Frankie, who wrote a book called Repair several years ago that I actually teach at Howard Law School. This is a white woman, radical scholar at the law school, to whom I've sent students. In fact, one of my best students, Brother Jalil Muhammad. He grew up in the Nation of Islam. Jalil is graduating from Columbia Law in a couple of weeks.
Wow, I know Brother Jalil.
You know Jalil. Jalil is my man.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Jalil is a brilliant scholar, and she's got him working on this reparations work. He's extending her work. What Catherine Frankie said is, my ancestors benefited from enslavement, even though I am not from people who were here. But I came here, and guess what I got coming here? Whiteness. She said, you know what? I think there should be perhaps a wealth transfer tax, and that money be put in a common fund. You can have community land trust, you can have education, you can have all. She writes about this in her book Repair. Harvard not talking about that. And Professor Brown-Nagin knows good and well they're not talking about that. So of course now when she says we shouldn't get fixated on it, I suspect that part of the reason that you don't want to get fixated on it is because that will require more of that institution than you are willing to call it your own. And when you read this report and you look at the history of Ewart Grenier, for example, who founded the African American Studies program at Harvard, whose daughter Lonnie, of course, we know, the jurist, and who Bill Clinton sold out. When you look at all these things in that report, when you look at William Hastie, Charles Hamilton Houston, the people who Harvard produced, Eva Dykes, W.B. Du Bois, most of them, many of them in that group came out of HBCUs. Now, if there's going to be a wealth transfer to HBCUs to train more students, that would look more like reparations, because you benefited from HBCU faculty. In fact, they said in the report, these HBCU undergrads you sent to us burnished our reputation, even though from 1898 to 1940, there were about 60 Black people in the Harvard student body at Harvard College. So the Negroes you did send here were superstars. And the Negroes who are there now are superstars and want to continue to shine in a firmament that they would not want to diminish by continuing to hold it to account in a way that might cost them their jobs. So I don't have no critique of them. They want to stay working on John Harvard's. Let's start a college, John Harvard's plantation. Right. Anyway, but I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna call it John Harvard's plantation. I'm not gonna call it. I'm not gonna, even though as they detail in the report, right, that literal seal of the law school for years, that sheaf of wheat in the middle was a gesture toward the enslaved plantations, out of which they got their donations and their profits and their investment returns on investments for loans. Oh, they detail it beautifully in the report. What you gonna do about it? We're gonna set up a fund and talk about it.
And see, Doc, and Dr. Carr, that's what I was thinking. I was like, I'm still not hearing. Give me the substance. You know what I'm saying? I feel like we're getting the appetizer, but we're not at the main course right now. And I'm thinking to myself, like, you know, like when you're talking about reparations, I know part of the conversation has been on education in terms of, okay, the descendants of enslaved people should be going to certain Ivy League schools like Harvard, Yale, free of charge.
Or better yet, going to HBCUs and other schools with some of that Harvard money. That would be reparations.
Wow.
See, but how's it repaired when you basically, in fact, the last thing they write in the conclusion is much remains to be done as we seek to live up to our highest ideals. But by undertaking these endeavors in good faith and with a commitment to meaningful action, the university imbues Veritas with new meaning and renews its commitment to excellence. Wait a minute, is that the same commitment to excellence you had when them enslaved Africans was working on the?
Come on.
So what you talking about? No,
and and Dr. Carr, explain this to me, because you've been in academia for years. You understand the dynamics, you understand the power players, you understand how everything works out.
Sure. Some of it.
What you say some of it, but when we look at this situation, I mean, like HBCUs are struggling. HBCUs in this country are struggling. They're still trying to make ends meet, right? Whether you're talking about Morgan, Howard, any HBCU, they're struggling. We're still petitioning. I'm gonna use that term lightly. The government for more assistance.
Yes.
But then you have institutions like Harvard, like Columbia, like Yale. Harvard has an endowment. Check this out, folks, of $53 billion.
Wait, what? Never slaying. 53 billion, baby.
$53 billion.
Wait a minute, how much is a billion? A billion is how many million? A billion is 1,000 million, right?
Right.
If you set aside 100 million, you set aside 1/10 of a billion, and you got 53. Man, they're gonna make their money back by the time the show is over.
50, or by the time the show is over.
And they didn't even give it out. It's an endowment, meaning what? We are setting it aside and keeping control of it. Come on, y'all.
That's what I'm saying. So I feel like there needs to be. I mean, the gap of inequality between HBCUs and the little money that HBCUs are getting versus these larger institutions. And I'm thinking to myself, it can't be that difficult to come up with a strategy or way to bring some real equity in it. And I always say this, Dr. Carr, and I've been saying this, you know, please correct me if I'm wrong. Dr. King said, "Is always the right is never the wrong time to do the right thing."
No question.
And so it's like at this point,
that's right.
At this point, I'm convinced that you just don't have the will You really just don't have the will to do the right thing.
Right.
So I mean, like I hear what Harvard is saying, and I think hell, any institution, any business or corporation, I think they all gain. If you're talking about Ford Motor Company, you talk whatever industry, they have all benefited from the transatlantic slave trade. They have all benefited on the backs of our people. But at this point, the admission is that's nothing to me. No. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Substantially.
I don't have any real criticism of Harvard because I don't have any expectations of Harvard. See, this is the thing. I mean, the idea is that we have these expectations. And so when you talk about the endowment, Howard is the closest HBCU to $1 billion endowment. It's just south of $1 billion. It's now in the high 800s. There's no other HBCU that's close. Spelman, I think, is second. They may be over the $300 million mark. But there aren't 10 HBCUs among the 103 or 4 or 5. And shout out to Morris Brown for reacquiring accreditation in the AUC. There aren't even 10 that have $100 million or more. And Harvard's sitting on 53 plus and making money every day with investments that speak to their participation in predatory lending, capitalism, this kind of thing. And in the report, they talk about the challenges Black students and others have made to how they invest their money. But, again, I don't have any criticism. I'm glad that this report came out. I think it sets a model and a template for this, for how to understand how higher education works at that level.
Yeah.
But I do think, though, finally, Farajii, that our challenge, and you've covered this extensively, brother, in the culture over the time that you've been on the air, it involves the least of these: forgiving student debt, lowering tuition costs, addressing K-12. And what Harvard has said in this report is we want to help with all of those things by sourcing our Harvard scholars that have analyzed this material. Yeah, okay, so you're going to burnish yourself for writing new reports on K-12 education and interface with school districts. You're going to do that for free now, right? Okay, or better yet, you're going to go in these school districts with your brilliant analysis at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and you're going to help them acquire the similar type of brilliant analysis, and then you're going to get out of their way, right? You're going to show up without the Harvard brand, right? Hell no, you're not going to do that because you want credit for it. And as you say, I mean, one thing about virtue signaling is key. It's got to be Harvard that does this. So yeah, nah.
So I guess that leads us to the next question. I mean, since you don't have any expectations, should we even have a discussion about accountability, holding them accountable?
Yeah. I mean, that's recommendation number 7, ensure institutional accountability.
Dr. Carr, you a trip, brother.
No, they are, man. But this is what I love. They say they're going to set up an accountability institutional apparatus.
You can't do that.
Sure you can.
No, you can't, Dr. Carr. Look, it's like, hey, Doc. Hey, look, brother. It's like when the police department.
Exactly.
When the police department has, and we're going to talk about this today on the show. The police department whipping our ass, right?
Farajii,
and then be like, we're going to have our internal affairs investigate.
Yes, sir. You are a national treasure, brother. That's when you put it. You put it exact. That is the perfect analogy, brother.
Like, how you going to investigate yourself,
brother? Well, or maybe you wait 20 or 30 years, and you go get the people who wrote The Wire, and you make an HBO series on corrupt cops and play yourself again. Hey, wait a minute! They came back to your hometown to make another show about dirty cops. And get some awards. I mean, we've seen this show before.
I mean, I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Yes, you do.
That is the craziest thing in the world. I don't get it. How do you investigate yourself? Brother. And then you like, it's like the conversation I think we had on Brother Roland's show, just in terms of these companies that say they want to give some money for racial justice. And then, or they give themselves, they like pat themselves on the back.
No question.
And it's like, that is counterproductive to what we're trying to do, to the progress we're talking about here. You can't investigate yourself. So, I mean, and I'm saying is there and please pardon, let me know if I don't know, because I really don't know, Doc. Is there a way or a commission or a group or institute or think tank, somebody that can go to these institutions and say, okay, you are at a place that you want to redress this your grievance or your ties to slavery. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going as outside independent group of individual scholars and researchers and historians, we're going to hold you accountable. And if you don't live up to our standards of accountability, then you owe us.
Yeah.
Is there
absolutely, absolutely. In the appendix 2, you'll see, for example, the consultancies they engaged in. They had all these dialogues. They brought people in to have conversations, and that's beautiful. One of the recommendations they want to do when they deal with Native Americans, they want to have a landmark conference with the Native American program at Harvard to advance national dialogue on the histories and legacies of indigenous slaveries and colonialism, all this kind of thing. And I'm sure there will be publications and there will be academic accolades and this kind of thing. But here, what you just said, and they say this at the end of their report, they say, the entanglements we've had with enslavement are in the past. They can't be undone, but the present and future are ours as a university community to shape. Now, of course, within that field, here's a solution based on what you just said, Brother Farajii. Let's say Harvard says we're going to put 10, 20, $30 million into establishing an independent, almost like a community review board.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And we encourage, and next thing you know, because see, this other thing about Harvard did it. So guess what? Yale working on their report somewhere. Columbia, they got to get their report. Okay. Again, go get Craig Stephen Wilder's book. You probably already gonna pay him a consultancy or get him to come in and give a talk. But anyway, now you've established this separate institution and you leave it alone.
Yeah.
And you don't, this is the other thing you don't do. You don't populate it with your faculty members.
That's right.
It's not the usual suspects. And you don't build links with Social Science Research Council, the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, the Mellon Foundation. Right. You don't then try to figure out how you can get some subsidized grants from the National Endowment for the Arts. No. We gave this group the money. And the people who were picked to decide first how to do the money came from Black institutions, came from brown institutions, came from indigenous institutions, and they don't have any ties to any of these places that create what some people have called the professional managerial class. So you know what you're not going to be able to do? Engage in what Catherine Liu and others call virtue hoarding. Because see, the thing is, it's the usual suspects,
right?
And they have some exquisite Blacks who will excoriate you. They'll do the right poem, they'll have the beautiful art, and they get fellowships, and they come right. And then you set them up and you get out of their way. What comes out of that? I trust what comes out of that. But then they can't do that. Why? Because there's no value in that for us.
I'm about to say, Doc, there's no value in that. They can't gain and benefit. They can't control. Now, here's my final point, Doc, and I'm so grateful that you spent some time with us today. I mean, my point is that, like, at this point, the conversation about repairing the damage, we can put it as the term reparations, or we could just look at the term justice. At this point, how do we shift the conversation from just money talk to legacy building, to start to here's why I'm asking. I have an 8-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Yes, sir.
By the time my son, God willing, gets to college in 10 years, and then 16 years for my daughter, if I don't want to have a conversation and be like, hey, son, yeah, we got reparations back in 20-something, but we spent it. So, we're going to have to figure out how to pay for your college.
How about that?
I don't, that doesn't, like, getting a check at this point doesn't seem like it will ease my soul.
Well, that's not going to happen. No.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to check. I need to have an investment in the futures of Black children and Black people. That's what I'm saying. When we talk about the stock and all of that, what is the futures of Black children and Black people in this country? Because that's the only investment. Like, I don't need a check. Like, I work and all of that. So I'm trying to figure out what is going to be the future of the children. So that way they don't have to carry this burden 15, 20 years from now. And my children come up to their dad, Dad, it's college is crazy, Dad. Like, it's very expensive. I thought y'all talked about that 10, 15 years ago. We did, son, but a lot of Black people just wanted to check.
How about that? Yeah, that's tough, Farajii. I think, and Frankie writes about this in her book, Repair. Wealth transfer, first of all, public dollars are our dollars. We pay taxes. And so policy making in terms of how to spend public dollars, if Harvard wants to make a dent, and I'm not saying they won't, again, I'm saying this is an opportunity. Use Harvard's clout, use the number of Harvard graduates who are in public policy making at the state, federal, and local levels to engage in resource investment in these communities that are suffering. Use your cultural capital, the one you burnish so much, to intervene there. Now, when you're talking about self-repair, of course, we can't look outside for that. And so we're having a conversation in the Black Star Network in part because, Brother Roland and all of us, are saying, let us support our own. This becomes a threat to the hierarchy because while we're having this conversation, I'm sure this Harvard report is going to be discussed on white-facing media, and they're going to have some experts in there, and they're going to blah, 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 and it's going to be a very different conversation. Why? Because it's burnishing those places. I'm not against the check. I think everybody should get a check, but I also think that can't be the objective, as you said. What we need to engage in terms of reparations transcends even the United States of America. If you're going to reimagine the country we live in and the world we live in, it's going to require a different look at the way we even think about each other. And I do not see that in the Harvard report, nor would I expect to see it in the Harvard report. No. Harvard's going to remain Harvard.
Right.
You see. And hey, be Harvard. But my question is, what's Tuskegee going to do? What's the legislature going to do in Louisiana for Southern and Grambling? What are we talking about with Alabama A&M and Alabama State? And more importantly, the K-12 schools. More importantly, everything from basic needs like food, shelter, housing, and that's policy making. You want to impress Harvard? Get some of them presidents and senators and some people to act right.
Right.
And we'll hand and on the grant and give us the resources. I think that's the kind of thing we have to do.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Doc, I'm like, I want it all. Yeah, I want the money. I want land. I want educational equity. I want it all. Because now it's becoming more and more insulting and a slap in the face of us. Like, you got all these institutions that recognize that they have gained and benefited from slavery. Therefore, they've gained and benefited from our ignorance up to this present day.
Yes.
You can say that. You can, oh, yes. No, I want it all.
Yes.
I want, and there should be no compromise because the United States government, these institutions, corporations, they have made us and conditioned us to believe that we were gaining something, and we're in some cases, some of the worse than we were 50, 60, 70 years ago.
Of course.
But so I want it all. I don't want no compromise. It's like, nah, bro, we can get a check.
Well, I mean,
let's get an acre of land for each family. You know what I'm saying? Let's make sure our children go to school for free. Like, I want it all.
Yes. Well, that's tough, Farajii, because I think what that requires then is a facing that we're not going to get that by behaving the way we've been behaving. The only way we made progress in any moment in world history is when the people who are being taken advantage of say, "That's it. You're not taking advantage of me anymore." So when you say that, of course, I think about the fact that again, Martin Luther King is evoked. Went to school at Boston University, had to come out of Morehouse and Crozier Theological Seminary, right there in the area. And Dr. King, of course, when he's critiquing militarism and materialism, when he is critiquing this whole structure that the society is based on, what you're talking about can be done, but it can't be done as long as we're asking. We have to turn away. One of the reasons Harvard almost has to write a report like this, and the other schools have to do it, is because people are increasingly turning away from those institutions.
Yeah,
as well they should.
Yeah.
So it's like, wait. Look. We understand. People are like, I'm not, but damn about Harvard. Ask yourself this: why was Nas a fellow at Harvard? Why did he receive the Du Bois medal? Why is there a hip hop archive at Harvard? Why? Because those young people from the Caribbean and from Black and brown communities in New York and everywhere else stood on their own ground, made their own culture without asking permission for anybody. It became so important that these places that want to be prestigious had to associate themselves with it. That's how you get reparations. You build your own. What Elijah Muhammad on say? Accept your own and be yourself.
Your own, be yourself.
Watch how quick we get reparations when we decide we're gonna reserve our labor. We're not running up and down the football field for University of Alabama anymore. We're gonna go play Tuskegee. Oh, we've got to investigate the yeah. Go ahead. It ain't gonna be enough yet. Anyway,
hey, Doc, I love and appreciate you.
I love
it. Man, I'm telling you, I love and appreciate you. This was a real honor, but your brilliance, your analysis, your insight, brother. I mean, just looking at this, I'm walking away from this conversation lifted, and I hope that our watchers are as well. But you gave us some real food for thought. You gave us you gave us a helping heap in the food for thought today. So I appreciate you for breaking this thing down, because one of the big things that we try to do on this show, and of course on yours and Brother Roland, is that we want to just move away all of the smoke and mirrors and let's get right to it. Let's see it for what it actually is.
No question. For the culture, Bible, for the culture. Great
for job. The culture, brother. All the culture. Dr. Greg Carr, host of the Black Table, professor of Africana Studies at Howard University. Dr. Carr, I'm going to say this on behalf of so many people. Thank you, brother, for being so good for the culture.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother Farajii. Keep it up, brother. We all be watching.
I appreciate it. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to switch gears, check in with our culture correspondent, Ashley Banks, check in with culture crew member, Nira Muhammad, to get the latest around the situation that is happening out of Minneapolis with the Chauvin Appeal, and what is going on with Minnesota and their talk of having a consent decree in their police department. Stay with us. That conversation is coming up next, only on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Table with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome back to the second hour of today's show of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm going to just tell you, folks, still pumped from this last conversation that we just had with Dr. Greg Carr and the announcement that Harvard made earlier this week about dedicating or committing $100 million to dealing with its slave legacy. If you missed the first hour, make sure you go back, check out the replays and everything, and let them share with your family and your friends. But that conversation got my juices flowing, man. Oh, man. All right. So sets me up for another conversation that we're going to have. And I wanted to bring in some heavyweights for this discussion. But there are a couple of things that are happening in Minnesota, folks, that we wanted to bring to your attention. First thing is that former police officer Derek Chauvin, the one responsible for killing George Floyd, continues to try to appeal the decision around his verdict. So we're going to be checking in a moment with culture correspondent Ashley Banks to talk to us about the latest with that. Also, Minnesota police, it looks like there has been a number of practices that shows that that the police departments there have been discriminating against Black and brown communities for years. Look at this, engaged in pattern of illegal racial discrimination. This is the Minneapolis Police Department there. And then this is according to the Department of Human Rights Investigations. They found that that police department violated civil rights law. Multiple iterations of city leaders failed to hold the officers accountable. It's a wild city up in Minneapolis. Wow. So we're going to have that conversation. So let me bring in these two dynamic women to talk to us about these things. First, culture correspondent Ashley Banks, and then Nira Muhammad, who is an activist, educator, and host of Queen Talks with Nira, the podcast that can be heard on all podcast platforms. Ashley, Nira, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you, Farajii.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. All right. Oh, Ashley, let's start with you dealing with this Derek Chauvin appeal. What is he trying to appeal for, Ashley?
Yeah, a lot of people were asking that question, Farajii, because it makes absolutely no sense. We all saw the video. We saw what happened. And Derek Chauvin is responsible for killing George Floyd. Now, he and his legal team, they filed an appeal on Monday claiming that he had an unfair trial. And so they give these reasons. They say that the media coverage was biased. The media demonized Chauvin while glorifying George Floyd. They mentioned that the jury was intimidated by the ongoing protests that were taking place against Derek Chauvin and against police brutality in general. The legal team also said their trial should not have been held in the same county in which Floyd died, stating that there was going to be bias anyway because everyone saw the video. It was the talk of not just the town, but of the nation, of the world. And so they believe that the trial should have taken place in another location. And the legal team cited that during jury selection, the $27 million settlement that was reached between the city and Floyd's family was announced during that time and really made the jury biased. And that's why he was convicted. Chauvin was convicted of 22 and a half years. So basically, they're just saying, Farajii, that it was an unfair trial. And so they have three options what they're asking for. They're asking a court to dismiss his conviction. They're asking the court to reverse his conviction and order a new trial in a new venue or hand down a lesser punishment. And so that's what they want.
Wait a minute. Did they ask the court? Did they ask the court, what exactly was they smoking?
Should have.
Get the hell out of here, man.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Dismissing, reversing, and asking for a lesser sentence.
Yeah. He simply believes it's unfair. He simply believes the media and all the attention that this tragic incident was getting basically was a disadvantage to him. But the reality is, dude, you killed George Floyd and it was recorded. The entire world saw what you did. The prosecution at the time was asking that Derek Chauvin get 30 years behind bars. And so for him to be convicted for 22 and a half, he kind of got off a little bit. And so, I mean, for him to ask for a lesser punishment for killing someone, I mean, really? Really?
Wait a minute. Look, I'm trying to. How old is Derek Chauvin? Do we know how old he is?
Yeah, we do. Let's see. Are you looking it up?
Yeah, I'm gonna look it up real quick. I want to make sure. He's 46 years old, so he's potentially could leave prison when he is 69?
Yeah.
I mean, your life is not over at 69.
It's not.
But for him, it's over because he killed a man on camera, right? But I think that this is a huge slap in the face, Ashley, that they even have even filed this appeal. And based upon what I understand around this, let me make sure I'm right. This was an 82-page appeal.
Yep.
So so I mean, and I'm not asking. I'm asking you to tap into your attorney side for a moment, because you're a future lawyer here. So, if you are making these type of criticisms about how the trial was done, the venue, it sounds like you're simply grasping for straws here. Am I correct?
They are. I mean, the legal team is doing what it's supposed to be doing. As much as you and I do not want Derek Chauvin to leave prison, he does have a legal team who's getting paid, and they're going to do all that they can to get him out of jail. And some of the things that they're raising, some of the concerns that they're raising, sure, we can say that they are legit, but at the same time, it doesn't matter where this case was tried. Everyone knows the case. So essentially, the outcome would probably be the same.
Yeah.
I do not think that Derek Chauvin deserves a lesser punishment.
No.
I believe the punishment is just, and some people would argue he should be getting more. He should be spending more time behind bars because he killed this man while this man is begging for help over a counterfeit $20 bill. So, yeah.
No, let me just tell you. The fact is, and Nero, I want to bring you into this right now. The fact is, he cannot handle this mentally, emotionally. He cannot handle being held responsible for the crime, because I truly believe, and Nero, tell me what your take on is. I truly believe this dude probably doesn't even think he did anything wrong. I don't think he did. I think the way he put his knee on George Floyd's neck with so much, this obnoxiousness, not even like he was just this superiority, this air of superiority. I truly don't think he did anything wrong. And I think that's the problem. Like it, and it may, and I've heard stories, Ashley, where people go to prison and it hits them once they behind bars, once they hear the sound of the cell closing, that I'm really in jail. I'm not going home. Like it hit people then. I don't think it hit him yet. I don't think it hit him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Farajii. I think in some ways it just probably hasn't. Him being a part of law enforcement, some of them do believe they're above the law and deserve a certain privilege that the average person doesn't. And who knows? There was a case in 2017 where he used excessive force against a 14-year-old, where he held a 14-year-old by the throat and used his flashlight and beat the 14-year-old on his head, right? And so it's like, he's probably used to having this power and abusing this power and getting away with his actions. And so, yeah, this could come as a shock to him that he's actually in jail after being a law enforcement officer for as long as he had been. And yeah, he wants out. I mean, anybody would want out of jail, especially a police officer like himself. We have no idea what he's facing in prison, especially being a law enforcement officer who has put other people in jail.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he has to come to the realization that you committed a crime. You have to do the time. There are consequences for what you did here. It was an unjustified killing at the end of the day, and you need to be behind bars. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely. All right. Culture Crew member Nero Muhammad wanted to bring her into this discussion. Nero, when you hear that, Derek Chauvin is still trying to, finagle his way to get a lesser sentence, to finagle his way to getting a whole new trial, how does that make you feel?
I'm not surprised at all, because he should feel like he was justified in the killing. Why? Because every other cop before him felt like they were justified by getting off. Was he justified? Obviously not. But come on, guys. How many other white police officers have murdered Black and brown people and gotten off for it? He's probably saying, like, why me? Why am I the anomaly? How am I the one that goes to jail? Heck, George Zimmerman never got jail time, but obviously look at how his life has turned out. I would be more surprised if he took his sentence lying down than for him appealing. I'm not surprised at all, because that's that white male privilege. He doesn't think that he did anything wrong. He thinks that he was justified in killing George Floyd. So that's why he's going to continue fighting this appeal until they say, this is it, you're done, you can't try to appeal it anymore. He feels justified in his killing. And if he does know that it's wrong, he's never going to admit to that. Because at the end of the day, that's too much like right. That there's pride, there's ego, there's, again, white supremacy, and it's just the male ego too. So you have all these things playing a part in this. And then you have this becoming such a global phenomenon. George Floyd was a global phenomenon. We had never seen protests happen globally the way they did until Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. So again, this has been a lot more media coverage than any other case. He is correct. But I think it's because we've gotten to a point where we as a people, we are tired. We as a nation are tired. And then globally, people are tired. Yeah. Again, Black and brown people aren't just treated this way in America. This is a global issue. So when you see people coming together around the world, something has to be done. So maybe if the George Floyd case had not caught on so well in the media, maybe the outcome for Chauvin would have been different. Maybe he would have just gotten a slap on the wrist like so many other officers did. So that is why he was expecting his case to go just like all those other cases before him.
That's an excellent point. Excellent point. And actually, Melvin Wright, who is checking us out on YouTube, said there was no place that the trial could have taken place where no one had heard of the case. Like, did they have, in this 82-page appeal, did they provide any recommendations on a space or on a place that they could have had this trial?
That's a great question. Not that I saw, Farajii. And I mean, clearly there's no place, once again, where they could have had this trial. We were all aware of this case. It was COVID-19. So we're all stuck at home, paying attention to social media more than ever before, paying attention to the news, paying attention to whatever was in the headlines. And so there's not one person who hadn't heard George Floyd's name. And as Nira stated, I mean, between the Ahmaud Arbery case, Breonna Taylor, and then George Floyd, that was a big year for brutality, right? And so we did, like you said, we saw the protests all around the world. This was a major thing. And so there is no place in this country where they could have had this trial where somebody would not have heard about the intricacies of this case.
Absolutely. All right, so that takes us to another situation coming out of Minneapolis where now the police department is going to be placed under a consent decree. In Baltimore, we know, we are very familiar with this because the Baltimore City Police Department is under a consent decree. But essentially, a consent decree are a list of not just recommendations, but some mandatory things that the department will have to do based upon the Department of Justice review and evaluation of the department's practices. And we're seeing that something that I don't think a lot of people are going to be surprised about, Nira, the fact that Minneapolis police department, they have been racially discriminating Black and brown people. They have been doing illegal things. I mean, we can go down the list because guess what? Probably a lot of police departments around the country are doing the same damn thing. And they get called out for it.
Yeah, I mean, to them, they're above the law. It's not illegal to them. I'm doing my job. This is what I'm supposed to do. You're not out there with me when I'm, going on these calls. They feel justified. I think that's the key word here, that justification. They feel justified. And we as a people, we're seeking justice. So it's like this. It's a battle because it's a battle of also our humanity. It's a battle of our morality. It's a battle of, even races when you think about it. And I hate to say that because you know me, I'm not one of those people that wants to make every single issue a race issue. That is not me. But you got to call it as you see it.
Yeah.
When you're looking at systems across America, police systems, a 5-year-old should not cry when a cop pulls up behind our car. Our 5-year-old should not cry simply because a cop pulls up behind our car. That is a reality down to our babies. Our babies feel like that about the police. So how do you feel as an adult, especially as a Black man? So to even live in this type of fear, we got to keep our foot on their necks because we need to be calling out more and more police stations than just Minneapolis, or departments rather, because this is an ongoing issue in America. It's not just happening. These are not isolated situations. These are situations that are kept quiet, that are ignored, and we as a people have to push that envelope. We got to push these conversations and change and reform.
And so when we look at this, Ashley, and I mean, here are some of the big key findings and recommendations from the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. This is what they said yesterday in their report. They broke it down into police culture, saying that there was race-based policing in Minneapolis, primarily a result of police force culture, that officers, supervisors, and trainers received deficient training, which emphasizes a paramilitary approach to policing that results in officers unnecessarily escalating encounters or using inappropriate levels of force. That's the first one about police culture. Look at that. The use of force. That the report found that officers use higher rates of more severe force against Black residents than white people in similar circumstances. Boom. Boom. Traffic stops. They found that the officers are more likely to stop vehicles with people of color and indigenous individuals, often for minor offenses. I mean, they go on and on, talking about how, even going in terms of looking at how they have been misogynistic against Black women. I mean, this stuff is just, it gets to the point, Ashley and Nira, where it's just like, bruh, like, you might as well. I don't even know what can be done at this particular moment, because as much as I'm not surprised by this, I'm tired by this.
Yeah.
So, Ashley, what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And first, I was surprised that the Department of Justice wasn't the one that launched this investigation. It was the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, and they launched it within a week after George Floyd was killed. And so, looking through the report, and they laid out some steps where they can find solutions to these problems, or suggested solutions. And they were saying there needs to be better training and more accountability, the same things we have been hearing for years. And like you're saying, we are tired. I mean, we've been hearing about this forever, since the beginning of time. Like, we've been hearing about these issues. And so, to me, sure, you can say training, but if it's a mindset, you can't train the mindset out of these individuals. And then when it comes to like accountability, who's holding the people that are in charge accountable, right? So you can have
it's supposed to be the city government.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be the city government. It's supposed to be, well, I don't have much confidence.
I have a quick question.
With the FOP, it's supposed to be that everything in America, if you look at very quickly, Nira, and I'm gonna get to your point, everything that we see and from a systemic institutional standpoint is supported by a checks and balance system. Like, you can't, if you violate this, then these are the consequences. That's how America is set up.
Supposed to be
set up. Go ahead, Nira, what's your point? Right.
Oh, so I was asking. So I was thinking about how, as educators, we are constantly having to take professional development training. It's ongoing training that we have to take in order to stay up to date with our certifications. Are there systems in place for police officers where they have to go through ongoing training? Not before you became a police officer, you had to go through these trainings. Even as teachers, I've had to take ethical bias trainings. I hate them personally. But they are important. They are necessary. And I think I mentioned this before, having Black women, and it was funny because we had Black women who actually trained us the last few times that I was a part of this training, and she was great. She made it better than what the training normally was. But just thinking about having those trainings where they're ongoing, for one, they are taught by someone who does not look like them. Mm-hmm. Or is a part of course, the FOP, or because I have another police officer train you. We get outside entities that come in and train us as teachers. But do they have something like that in place for police officers?
Well, yeah, the police officers go through training all throughout. Now, do they go? Okay. I don't think police officers go through as much training as teachers do. And
well, I mean, obviously, they don't have to have a degree. But I'm just saying,
No, it depends. And I've talked to police officers. They do have certain trainings. They have bias trainings, implicit bias trainings. They have sensitivity trainings. They have all of that. We had Dr. Tyrone Powers on They got training for all of this. People tend to believe that the police officer aren't being trained, but they are.
So that's a good point. So they are being trained.
They're just not doing the right damn thing.
Okay, so that was the point I kind of wanted to get to then. So they are being trained. Nothing's changing, so the trainings are not working.
It's not. Is it the training not working or the human not working?
The human. But my thinking then is now we need to change the process of becoming a police officer.
Yeah.
What is the same way? Oh my gosh, I remember trying to get a job years ago at the correctional facility, and the questions that they asked you were there was so much as the test we had to go and take, and I didn't get hired. They were like, nope. Whatever I answered, they probably asked if I smoke weed, and I probably say yeah. But anyway, you know what I mean? They probably asked me something back then, you know what I mean, that I probably answered honestly, that I probably should have lied to it. But just thinking about, before you even get your foot in the door, they're asking the right questions to see where your mind is at before you even get in the door. That is what we need to do. Because if we're doing the trainings aren't working, that means we need to change the process of even becoming a police officer.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Actually, very quickly, looking at this report coming from the Department of Human Services and Human Rights, what do you foresee is happening? What would you think is going to be the next step? Or have they already said what the next step is going to be?
Well, yeah, the next step is going to involve the negotiation process of creating this enforceable agreement that's going to address the issues that were listed in the report. But as of right now, there's no timeline for those negotiations. But the report said that the city and the police department can start moving forward and implementing other things to create solutions to these problems. And they said that whenever this enforceable contract is created, that it will last until these issues dissolve. But as of right now, I don't know what's going to come of this. Minneapolis has had problems for at least a decade, as this report showed. So we're sure it goes way past the decade. But we'll just have to wait and see. But like you guys are saying, obviously training is not the answer. Obviously, this accountability thing is not the answer, because these are things that have been put in place in other police departments, and we're still seeing issues. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens in Minneapolis. Absolutely.
Ashley Banks, culture correspondent, keeping us informed about what's going on locally and nationally. Ashley, thank you so much for giving us that update. We truly appreciate it. Folks, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come right back, we're going to talk about parenting. Do you think your child can handle different or dangerous ideas? This is one of the big questions that are being posed to children, especially as we're living in a time of pandemic learning, and so much has changed in socially and culturally. Are we prepared for that as parents? We check in with culture crew member Nira Muhammad to give us some insight as to understanding the changing dynamics of parenting in 2022. We'll have that conversation. Plus, we got trends posting doing the most. So stay with us. A lot to come at you for the final 30 of the culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back, folks.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Table with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punching!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Wow. Roland was amazing on that.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
All right, folks, we wanted to have a conversation about parenting because things are changing in this current culture of parenting, from everything from pandemic learning to understanding the intricacies and complexities from things from social justice issues to gender to everything that's happening in the world. And so, you know, you might be wondering, who else is going through this kind of trial of trying to figure out how to parent your child? Let me just say, I am. Yes, folks, look, let me tell you, being a parent in 2022, it's certainly not easy, whether you're black or white, whether you're Christian or Muslim. It's just not easy to try to get your children, your little human beings, prepared for the big world. And so there was an op-ed that was written by New York Times columnist Matt Gross that brings up this issue. And he poses the question, well, I'm posing the question based on that op-ed. It says, can your child truly handle different and dangerous ideas? I wanted to have this conversation with educator Nira Muhammad to give us some insight, because she is seeing parenting being expressed in a lot of different ways. If you go into any school, folks, you know that every child is really a representation of their home. And as much as we like to believe that, for example, that within the Black community that we're all on the same page, or that most of us are on the same page, we might find out that we really aren't. I want to bring back Culture Crew member Nira Muhammad back into the fold. Nira, we got Nira with us? Yep. There we go. All right, cool. So I wanted to have this discussion because Matt Gross, who wrote this piece, he talks about how his daughter, who's 13 years old, had asked him, Dad, can I not go to school can I not go to school tomorrow? And he made the point, like, why? And she was, he thought that she wanted to, stay home for a particular reason, or and it was just simply, she was just in a space where she just wanted to take a rest from school. And he was like making a point to her and say, well, you know, you could do what we used to do, which is fake going to school. Like you walk out the door, but you can hang out here and chill with your friends there and all of those things. And she was making a point. No, that's too much. I just rather ask you because I wanted to talk about, you know, I have some things I wanted to share with you about this. But it brought up this whole idea of how our children are making choices, dangerous, or how they're dealing with the choices because of the information that we're in and the time that we're in. There are a lot of children that are being confronted with very different ideas than what they are accustomed to at home, and in some cases, some dangerous ideas. So, for example, and you know, there were parents giving an uproar about Turning Red, the movie Turning Red. Oh, children should not have to learn about menstrual cycles. This is not appropriate for children. There have been parents that have been protesting, as we've been seeing across the country, certain books that the children shouldn't read. So it's asking us, it's forcing us, and I want Keenan post this. Let's put this quote on our screen because I think this is it. This is what Matt said. When I look at the broader cultural landscape, I feel isolated in my permissiveness. Parents, or at least the parents who seem to win media attention, are freaking out over everything their kids see, read, and do. Leaving aside the usual political battles between left and right, what's at play here are two fundamentally different conceptions of parents' responsibilities to their children with the same ultimate goal. Here's the question, though. He said, do you offer your kids broad exposure to the world in all of its beauty and foulness and hope they make good decisions, or do you try to protect them from ideas and activities that you see as dangerous or immoral and also hope they make good decisions? That's a big question. These are two big questions. What's your take on this?
So first of all, the ignorance of him telling his daughter, you should have just ditched school so she could ditch school. You don't know where she is.
No. He said, he told her no. He did say, no, you can't just stay home for no valid reason.
So I have an issue with him telling her no. As an educator, your daughter asked you for a mental health day. Your daughter asked you for a mental health day. We need mental health days.
Right.
Personally, okay, and here's the thing. I was always a straight A student in school. I could literally go to my mom and say, Mom, can I stay home today? I just want to stay home today. Sure, you can stay home. Why? Because she knew that as a student, if I missed anything, I was going to make it up, that it was not going to affect my grades, nor was it going to affect my learning. She also knew that I was very studious and that if I asked for a day home, it was because I really needed it. To think that we as adults are the only ones who need mental health days, who only need breaks, is just weird to me. Like, that doesn't even make sense. Children have feelings. Children, you know, they need a break sometimes too. And we don't know what's going on at school. Maybe she's being bullied. Maybe someone's been making fun of her. Maybe she's really tired. Maybe her classroom is extremely, extremely disruptive and she just mentally just needs a break from it for a day. I would never tell my child no. This doesn't sound like a child who is constantly asking, can they stay home, or lying and saying that they're sick. She sounds like a very responsible 13-year-old. The kind of 13-year-old that I would definitely be like, sure, but let's talk about it. What's going on? That's when you open up and have conversations with your children. That's like a first step to good parenting. Open communication with your children. Because the worst thing that you could do is cut your child off and make them feel like they can never talk to you. That is the worst thing that you could do. So I would never just completely shut them down. No, you're going to school. And the first question is, well, what's going on? Why do you want to stay home? That's a perfect opportunity for you to have a real conversation with your child. Now, so the other question about, do we expose them to stuff or do we try to shield them? Personally, I think it depends on the age and the developmental level. There are certain things that I'm going to expose to my 10-year-old that I would not expose to my 5-year-old. There are certain conversations that I would have with a 15-year-old that I would not have with a 10-year-old. So you have to think about this from a developmental level. And also, you know, and I'm just going to throw this out real quick. My teaching philosophy has always been, to be a great teacher, you always have to be a student. So even as parents, we have to think of ourselves as children. We have to constantly be learning and evolving so that we can teach those new concepts and evolutions to our children. We can't always just think off of what was going on 5 or 10 years ago. That's not the same reality. Our children are not, I wasn't exposed to having a smartphone when I was in elementary school. I have elementary school children now in 3rd grade who have an iPhone. So to have a 3rd grader with an iPhone versus back when I was in 3rd grade, we didn't even have smartphones when I was in 3rd grade. Cell phones weren't popping like that. And you definitely didn't have one in elementary school. So I can't teach them on the same basis of back in the 90s. This is not the 90s. This is 2022. So we have to think about where we are as a society now, the age of our child, the level of maturity of that child, because every 10-year-old is not the same. And you have to also think about, I'm not a big fan of the whole shielding thing. I just think that there are certain things that you introduce as certain developmental stages. That's what I'm going to say.
Right. Which is part of the conversation that needs to be had with either, the other parent or, like there has to be some intentionality there before you just jump into it. Like, for example, you talked about, if a child say, hey, I want to skip school, I think the non-thinking answer would be, no, you can't skip school, blah, 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 right? You just jump to that space, right? Versus, hey, okay, whoa, okay, what's going on? And I'm just saying, if your mind is not there, you just automatically turn that part on. But to Matt's point about, shielding and whether you should shield, like, I agree. I think that you do need to figure out where your child is. We have, and you see it every day. We have a culture where we say things like, oh, she thinks she grown, or he think he grown, or he's smelling himself, or things like that. But then I always wonder to myself, didn't you cultivate that? And I'm saying that as a parent. Like, we cultivate grownness in our children.
The stuff that the students say, I ask them, where do you get that from? And they'll tell me, kids are so on, like, don't get me wrong, kids, I'm not saying kids don't ever lie, because they do to protect themselves or to get out of trouble. But they're free. They love, like, if you build those relationships with your students, I have the relationship with my students where they just talk like some stuff I just wish they didn't tell me, to be honest. But they're exposed to a lot. They are exposed to a lot. I've had students ask me about, Miss Muhammad, do you watch Snowfall? How do you know that show? You don't watch that show, do you? I mean, what? I remember one time I had a student tell me they watching P-Valley with their mom. P-Valley.
Wow.
I was like, what? Huh?
Wow.
So there are definitely levels to exposure, but unfortunately, some people don't think about that kind of stuff. They don't care. They think it's cute. They think it's funny. I have one student who sleeps all day in class, and I talked to his mom, and she's like, oh, that's because he's up on the video game all night. And I'm like, excuse me? Why is your child, how does a 9-year-old dictate what time they go to bed? Are you a parent or are you a friend?
Yeah.
Like, you're not 22. When you're 22, I can be your friend, but not at 9 years old.
Right. And do you feel like, while you working and talking and engaging with those children, do you feel like that they are prepared to handle different ideas than what they have been taught? Or do you feel like that if they had a discussion about something, a cultural shift, cultural changes, that they can be able to process that? Because I think that's the place that we're talking about getting children to, right? We're talking about getting them to a place that if certain conversations come up among their friends, or if they're put in certain circumstances, that they have the skill set, the mindset, the heart to be like, no, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? Like, we want to get our children to that place. And I'm wondering, for a lot of parents, do you feel like that's the case? Are your children at that place?
I personally, I do, because I hear those conversations all the time. I hear them to each other. No. Well, they'll come to me and tell me what so-and-so said. And I actually love that. I hate when they're like, oh, you snitched. I actually just had a conversation with them about the word snitching yesterday. And I was just like, I had to pose the question. If something serious or harmful happened to you, would you not want the person that harmed you to get in trouble? And they all had to sit and think about it. Like, yeah, I would. So would you get mad at the person for telling on the person that hurt you? No. So I think that our children are very bright. I think that they have a lot of street smarts. I want them to have more book smart. I feel like my kids are more street smart than book smart, and I want to change that narrative in my classroom. But I do feel like a lot of them do have the skills, but then some of them don't, and it's for different reasons. Again, developmental reasons. It could be mental health reasons. It could be, what they're being exposed to at home. Some children are extremely, extremely sheltered, where on the other end, you have some that there's no structure at home. So again, you're dealing with students. It's a rainbow spectrum. You know what I mean? It's literally a rainbow spectrum. Like, we're in one class, but you just don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a lot to deal. That's a lot to put on an educator, especially if the educator comes from their own personal views and values and biases. Now they got to readjust on behalf of the children. Let me just share what people are saying. Taylor said, shielding takes into consideration the child's ability to comprehend a thing from cause to effect. Adults have problems with that. Do you agree with that?
Say that one more time.
So Taylor said, shielding takes into consideration the child's ability to comprehend a thing from cause to effect. Adults have problems with that.
Is she saying that adults have a problem with the cause and effect portion of it, explaining that to children? Because I think that she makes a really good point. Anytime you expose children to something, you do need to have a deeper conversation so that they can understand, well, if this situation happened, what caused it? And then what was the outcome of it? Yes, right. I do think that some adults have an issue having those conversations. I mean, I grew up in the 90s, so I didn't get the cause and effect. The cause and effect conversation. It was more like, no, this is just what I said. I said what I said.
Exactly.
But I don't want to be that kind of parent, and I don't want to be that kind of teacher, and I definitely don't want to be that kind of parent, because that is where their critical thinking comes into play.
Right.
Are they able to critically think about a situation from start to finish? If they can, that would change the trajectory of so much of their lives. If they think about the repercussions of their actions, that could possibly change the action from the very beginning. Those are life skills that we should be teaching our children. For parents who reprimand their children, I'm not a big spanker, but if you spank your children, if you put them in timeout, never, ever, ever do that without having a conversation with them about what they did, why what they did was wrong or inappropriate, and then why they are being punished. And the punishment needs to match the situation with the quote unquote crime.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, why would you spank your child for making a mistake and knocking over your vase? If it was a genuine accident, you're going to go take out your belt and give your kid a beating for that? No. Maybe they were running around for 5 minutes and you kept asking them to sit down. Okay, so now you owe me back 5 minutes, and you're going to sweep up this mess that you just made. That is an appropriate repercussion to that. You broke the vase, which just happened in my class. That's why I said it. They broke the vase. They then swept up the floor. They all apologized. They owed me 5 minutes. That was appropriate.
Right. And I think that when you're talking about that whole cause and effect dynamic, it does, like you said, it provides an opportunity for critical thinking, but then it helps children to understand how you got there.
Yeah.
To help children understand how you got to your thinking. And dear, I don't think a lot of people, like, we have been taught, and then like you said, you grew up in the 90s, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. My parents, I love them, but they did not give me insight into their thinking until after a situation.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that you could probably save a lot of pain and heartbreak if you just told your child straight up, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is why. Even going as far as to say, you know what, I'm a little scared that if you did something like this, it might hurt you. I'm a little scared about that.
Yes,
Having that
I
level
break it
of
down to my
vulnerability.
students. You were here the other day where I had a conversation with them about the importance of following directions. And I had to give them these different scenarios. Sometimes you have to give children different scenarios in order for them to really understand where you're coming from. And you start to, and as children, you see them open up. Oh, wow. I didn't think about that. That makes so much sense, Miss Muhammad. Yeah. And that's the importance of having conversations. We expect children to just be children and then be adults. Yeah. We don't think there's any work besides sending them to school in the midst of all that. We think that teachers are the moms, we're the nurses, we're social workers, everything. We're all these things. So what role does the parent play? And I think a lot of parents need to ask themselves that question. What role do you play in raising and creating a critical thinker, a critical human being, a moral human being, and someone that's going to shape our society for the future? I don't think a lot of people even think about that. Wouldn't even think about having children.
No, here's what. All right, let me throw something out there. I think people think about that, but I don't think people are intentional about how much actual work that requires.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? Like I don't think, like, when you're talking about raising a child, and I feel like I'm borderline.
I love to ask people, why did you have kids? I would love to ask people that someday. What made you want to be a mom?
Right.
What made you want to be a dad?
Because here's the other part about that. That part is there's a cultural thing, or a cultural compulsion that I think that Black people, especially within Black communities, like, we are kind of quote unquote forced, like, when you get to a certain age, to have children.
Oh yeah.
And then at a certain point, if you don't have children at a certain age, then people start to look at you funny and start looking at you crazy and all of that stuff, right? And so, I think that if we were honest, like, some of us did not take the proper protective measures, but then in another group of us, we thought that we could find ourselves by having children.
Yeah.
And so having children added to, it's like a resume builder, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, oh yes, I do this, I do that. Oh yeah, I'm a mom, I'm a dad. You know what I mean? And it's like, we got to be more intentional about, about raising our children. And that's why I think that this conversation is, like, important, just because you got forces coming to your children every day. Like, every day your child watches TV, watches YouTube on the tablet. All of these ideas about the world are coming into their head at a very rapid pace.
Yep.
And then, this is something that I've had to personally do, start to deprogram your children from all of the information that's coming to them. We can't be with our children 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Some of us can't because they just mentally and emotionally couldn't handle it. But the fact is that we can't be around. So you have to be like have to figure out what the balance is. But here's the thing, though, dear, that I think that is missing. The thing is, you have to be, as the adult, you got to be clear about where you stand on issues before you can have conversations with your children.
Yep, and that's why I said to be a good teacher, you got to be a student. To be a parent, you need to know. Do your due diligence, because how are you going to have a conversation with your child about something that you don't know anything about? So sometimes you might have, but kids might get the influence before it comes into you. So you might have to say, oh, wait a minute, enlighten me. Tell me about it, because that will happen. There are times when Nigel comes to me with something that has went way over my head. I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. You got it from YouTube. And I'm like, well, tell me about that. These are opportunities to talk. That is a big, big issue. Often parents don't even want to talk to their own children. I mean, I've had children ask me this year, is Jesus white? Is there such thing as heaven? I mean, they're asking me questions. Where do babies come from? Oh, God, I didn't answer that one. I didn't answer any of these questions, to be honest. But they're asking me questions that, in my mind, I'm like, why didn't you ask your mom? Why didn't you ask a caregiver at home? And sometimes I do say, well, did you ask your mom? I'm like, oh, no, like my mom, she just was like, go to my room or go, she was doing something. And I get it. Sometimes we are busy. And this goes to myself as well. We as parents have to do better with not making our children feel like they are a burden to us. They did not ask to be born. They did not ask to be in this world. You laid your hot tail down, since you want to call kids hot. You lay down and you had a good old time. And now you got a baby. And who's going to grow into an adult? So if you don't want kids coming up asking you questions, you might want to do some protective measures, have those in place before you decide to spread your legs and have the baby. So again, when you're talking about parenting, that goes back to family planning. Are you ready to have a child? Are you mentally, emotionally, financially, physically ready to take on a child? Because it's so much more than buying them Jordans. It's so much more than the clothes that you put on their back. Too many parents care, and I'm saying this for the Black community. Too many parents care more about the shoes on their feet, but you go in their house and there's not one book in their house for their child to read. I have a problem with that.
Gotcha. Yep.
No library, but you have all the latest fashions.
Yep.
Where's your parents thinking?
Yep. Yep. And I think that's, and if you have books, if you expose your children to other resources, it gives them a sense of the world around them. If you have those deep conversations about cause and effect,
ask them about their day.
Ask them about their day. If you sit down and watch a YouTube video with them to understand what your child is looking at, to be able to get ready to be able to either lift up what's happening on the screen or deprogramming them from what's happening on the screen.
Listen,
so you got
I've had to watch Guava Juice, okay?
Look, Guava Juice, Gaming with Kev. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to know, like, if you're a parent and you don't know that, your child's favorite.
When I know the stuff that they watch, they're shocked. You know that, Miss Muhammad?
Yes.
They're surprised because their parents don't know this stuff. They're not paying attention.
Right.
You need to know what your child is watching. You need to know what they're into, what their likes are, what their strengths. You should know. I can look at my son and I can almost surely tell you one of 3 things that he's going to be when he grows up. Just because I watch my son and I pay attention to who he is as a person. You have to watch and know your child. A teacher should not know your child better than you.
That's it. That's not good. That's not good. All right, we're gonna have to stop the conversation right here. Nira, thank you so much for your analysis and insight as always. People were really, appreciated what you had to share to this afternoon. So we thank you so much and continue to do the great work of being an educator and more importantly,
I don't know, Farajii. I don't know.
That's another conversation. Another conversation. Appreciate you. Talk to you soon.
Love you much.
All right. All right, folks. That's going to do it for us. Man, what a fantastic show that we had today. Big shout out to all of our voices today. Big shout out to my big brother, Dr. Greg Carr, for checking in and spending some time with us in the early hour of the show. And then, of course, Ashley Banks and Nira Muhammad. Thank you, thank you, thank you, folks. Continue to support us. We having these conversations like no other. That's why we tell you each and every day, blackstarnetwork.com is the place to put your support behind. Yes, folks, support us. We want you to show us that you are serious just as much as we are serious about Black-owned media. Support us, Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, Zelle. Go to the website, download the app on your tablet, your smartphone, and your television, and make sure that you tell your friends and family about us. And then guess what? Boom! Get plugged in. Stay plugged in. Get unapologetically unfiltered and all of that, and make sure that you do it with us. All right? We got great shows on this show, on this network. And guess what? We want you to see it. We want your family to see it, because we know what we're offering is something that you're not going to get any other place. So big shout out to Brother Roland Martin for continuing to push the conversation and continue to push the envelope, blackstarnetwork.com. All right, I thank y'all for tuning in. So many of you have tuned in. Thank you for all of our culture crew on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned. Up next at 6 o'clock, of course, is Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.